I died at 32 in a studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a mattress on the floor, staring at my phone as it buzzed with another creditor's call I couldn't answer. The last thing I saw before my heart gave out. Stress-induced cardiac arrest, the coroner would later write, though no one came to claim my body for 3 days, was a news alert about my ex-husband's company going public. TechCore Solutions. Valuation, $4.2 billion. I'd helped him build that company. I'd been employee number 3, the one who coded through the night while he pitched to investors, the one who believed in his vision when it was just whiteboard sketches in our cramped apartment. And when he asked me to sign away my stock options so he could bring on a real CTO, someone with a Stanford degree instead of my state school diploma, I'd signed. Because I loved him. Because he said we were a team. Because his mother, Margaret Chen, assured me that family doesn't need contracts. The options vested the next day, 10,000 shares, worth $42 million at IPO. 6 months later, he filed for divorce. Said he needed someone more ambitious. Someone who fit his new lifestyle. He married his Stanford CTO 3 months after that. I got nothing. The prenup his mother insisted on made sure of that. I died alone, broke, and forgotten. And then I woke up. The smell hit me first. Margaret's jasmine perfume, the one she wore like armor to every family dinner. Then the sound. Marcus's voice, smooth and practiced, the same tone he used in investor meetings. Sweetheart, you know this is what's best for the company, for us. I was sitting at their dining table, the real one, the antique monstrosity Margaret bought at auction to prove the Chens had arrived. My hand was cramping around a pen. In front of me sat the stock option surrender agreement, the same document I'd signed without reading 7 years ago. Or was it 7 years from now? Time felt like a Mobius strip. Emma, you're not even listening. Marcus's hand covered mine, and I fought the urge to flinch. This hand had held me through my father's funeral, had slipped an engagement ring on my finger, had signed divorce papers without a tremor. I looked up at him, really looked, and saw what I'd missed the first time. The calculation in his eyes, the way his jaw tensed when I hesitated, the glance he shot his mother across the table. Margaret sat like a queen at court, her posture perfect, her expression benevolent. Emma, dear, we've been through this. Jason has the credentials TechCore needs. Investors want to see a Stanford graduate on the masthead. You understand, don't you? This is about legitimacy. Jason Park, 35, Stanford CS PhD, and I now knew the man who would marry Marcus 18 months from now. He sat to my left, quiet and unassuming, his laptop open but angled away from me. In my first life, I'd thought he was shy, professional. In this moment, with death's clarity still sharp in my mind, I could see the smugness lurking behind his wire-rimmed glasses. The company needs this, Marcus continued. His thumb traced circles on my wrist, a gesture that used to make me melt. We need this. Once we bring Jason on as CTO, we can close the Series B. $20 million, Emma. That's generational wealth. Our children's children will never have to worry. Our children. We would never have children. In the original timeline, he'd kept delaying, saying the company needed his full attention. Then, he'd gotten a vasectomy without telling me. I found out during the divorce proceedings. When do the options vest? I asked, keeping my voice soft, uncertain. The same tone I'd used back then, when I still believed my husband loved me. Tomorrow, Margaret said too quickly. She recovered with a smile. Which is why we need you to sign tonight, dear. Jason's lawyer can only file the paperwork first thing in the morning, and we need him to have those options before the vesting date. Legal technicality. A lie, I knew that now. The options could be transferred anytime within a 30-day window after vesting. But I'd been too trusting to question it, too desperate to prove I was a team player, too convinced that my value lay in being supportive rather than valued. I looked down at the document. 10,000 stock options, vested over 4 years with a 1-year cliff. Tomorrow marked my 1-year anniversary at TechCore. Tomorrow, 2,500 shares would vest. In 6 months, when Series B closed, those shares would be worth $1.5 million. In 3 years, when the company went public, they'd be worth $10.5 million, and I was about to sign them away for nothing. Except this time, I wasn't. I need to read through this, I said, pulling the document closer. Marcus's hand tightened on my wrist. Emma, my lawyer already reviewed it. It's standard. Then it won't hurt for me to read it too. I met his eyes and saw a flash of something dark. Anger? Fear? In my first life, I'd backed down at this point. Apologized for being difficult. Signed. Emma. Margaret's voice had steel beneath the silk. This isn't about trust. This is about whether you're committed to this family, to this company, to your marriage. There it was. The ultimatum I'd been too naive to recognize. Sign or prove you're not really one of us. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew without looking it was my best friend, Rachel. In the original timeline, she'd called during this dinner to warn me not to sign, having heard through her law firm connections that TechCore was about to explode in value. I'd ignored her call, chosen my husband's family over my best friend's instinct. Rachel and I hadn't spoken in the last 5 years of my first life. She'd tried to reach out after the divorce, but I'd been too ashamed. I let the call go to voicemail. You're right, I said, setting down the pen. This is about commitment. Marcus relaxed, his practiced smile returning. I knew you'd understand. We're a team, sweetheart. Always have been. Which is why I'd like to propose an alternative. I pulled out my own laptop, the same battered MacBook I'd used to code TechCore's entire back-end architecture. Instead of signing away my options, what if I convert them to shares, with a vesting schedule that aligns with the company's growth milestones? That way, we're all incentivized toward the same goals. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. That's not how this works, Jason said. His first words of the evening. His voice was higher than I remembered, with a slight nasal quality that probably wouldn't have bothered me before I knew he'd end up sleeping with my husband. Why not? I kept my tone innocent, curious. If we're all committed to TechCore's success, we should all benefit from it, right? Emma, you're not understanding the corporate structure. Marcus's voice had lost its warmth. This was the voice he used with incompetent vendors, with interns who couldn't keep up. Your options were granted as part of your compensation package. Jason needs those options as part of his package. It's that simple. Then give him different options, new ones. We can't dilute the pool further. The investors won't allow it. I'd heard that line before. It was bullshit. I'd seen the cap table. There were plenty of options available, but in my first life, I hadn't known enough to call him on it. Show me the cap table, I said. Silence. Margaret set down her wine glass with a sharp click. Emma, dear, I think you're tired. This has been a long day for everyone. Why don't you sleep on it, and we can discuss this tomorrow? After the options vest, I said. Not a question. The timing is coincidental, Marcus said, but his ear was turning red. It always did when he lied. I stood up, tucking my laptop under my arm. I'm not signing tonight. I need to think about this. Emma, I said no, Marcus. His face went through a fascinating journey. Shock, anger, calculation, and finally a cold fury I'd only seen once before, when a developer quit right before a major deadline. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. I walked out of that dining room with my unsigned document and my intact stock options, and I felt more powerful than I had in either lifetime. Marcus caught up with me in the driveway. What the hell was that? Me, standing up for myself. Standing up for Emma. This is business. This is our future. My future, I corrected. My options. My work. I coded 70% of TechCore's platform, Marcus. I debugged your revolutionary algorithm when it kept crashing. I'm the one who figured out the scaling issue that almost killed us in beta, and you want me to just hand over my compensation so you can bring in your new CTO? Jason has the credentials. I have the results. There's a difference. He grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. What's gotten into you? I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. 7 years of marriage, 4 years of divorce aftermath, 1 lifetime of regret. I'm tired of being underestimated, I said. By you, by your mother, by everyone who looks at my state school degree and assumes I'm not good enough. That's not fair. I've never, You asked me to sign away millions of dollars in equity because some Stanford grad needs it for his compensation package. What part of that says you value me? He dropped my arm, his expression shifting to something I recognized. The negotiation face. Okay, let's talk about this rationally. What do you want? I want what I earned. That's not how startups work, Emma. We all make sacrifices. Then you sacrifice something. Give Jason your options, or your mother's. I noticed neither of you are signing anything away tonight. His jaw clenched. My mother funded this company, and I built it. We stood there in the cool night air, two people who'd once promised forever, now facing each other like opposing counsel. Fine, Marcus said finally. Keep your options. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've given up. What am I giving up exactly? He smiled, and it wasn't kind. Jason won't join without adequate equity, and without Jason, we won't close Series B. And without Series B, TechCore will run out of runway in 6 months. Your options will be worth exactly nothing. Is that a threat? It's reality. You can keep your pride and your worthless options, or you can be part of something bigger than yourself. Your choice. He walked back into his mother's house, leaving me alone in the driveway. I sat in my car for a long moment, hands shaking, heart racing. The rebirth thing, I still didn't understand it. Didn't know if this was a dream, a second chance, or some kind of cosmic punishment. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't signing those papers. My phone rang. Rachel. Please tell me you didn't sign, she said without preamble. I didn't sign. Oh, thank God. Emma, I don't know what's going on with TechCore, but my colleague in venture law says there's serious money sniffing around. Like, serious. You need to hold on to those options. Marcus says we'll lose our Series B funding if I don't give them to Jason Park. Rachel snorted. Jason Park? The guy who got fired from Google for stealing code? My blood went cold. What? It was settled quietly, but yeah, whole thing was a mess. He's brilliant, sure, but he's also ethically sketchy as hell. So, why would Marcus want him? I thought about Jason sitting at that table, quiet and unassuming, his laptop angled away from me. About Marcus's insistence that we needed him. About the timing, sign tonight, transfer tomorrow, before the options vested. I have to go, I said. But Rachel, thank you for calling, for everything. Emma, are you okay? You sound weird. I'm better than I've been in a long time. I drove home to the apartment Marcus and I shared, though he'd probably stay at his mother's tonight, and pulled up TechCore's code repository. My access was still active. I was still listed as lead developer, though I knew that would change soon. In the original timeline, Marcus had quietly reassigned my responsibilities to Jason within a week of my signing away the options. By month 2, I'd been restructured into a junior role. By month 6, I'd quit in humiliation. But I hadn't quit before creating a detailed backup of every line of code I'd written, every system I'd designed. I'd been hurt, not stupid. I spent the night combing through the repository, and what I found made my stomach turn. Someone had been making changes, small ones, subtle, in modules I'd built. Introducing inefficiencies, creating vulnerabilities. The kind of thing that wouldn't show up in basic testing but would cause catastrophic failures under load. The commits were anonymous, routed through a VPN, but the coding style was distinctive, elegant, Stanford taught. Jason Park had already infiltrated TechCore's codebase. He was sabotaging it, and when it inevitably crashed and burned, he'd swoop in as the hero CTO with the fixes, taking credit for solving problems he'd created. It was brilliant, in a sociopathic way. I created my own backup, documenting everything. Then I started coding. Not fixes, traps. Little Easter eggs buried in my own modules, accessible only with my personal encryption keys. If Jason tried to claim my work as his own, if he tried to lock me out or rewrite history, I'd have proof and leverage. By 6 a.m., my options had vested. 2,500 shares of TechCore Solutions, strike price of 10 cents per share, currently worth $250 in paper value. In my first life, I'd signed them away before I even knew they existed. In this life, they were mine. Marcus came home around 8 a.m., looking tired. He found me in the kitchen, drinking coffee, my laptop open. "We need to talk," he said. "Okay." He sat across from me, running his hands through his hair. "I spoke with my mother and with Jason. We've decided to rescind the offer." "What offer?" "Jason's employment. If you won't transfer the options, we can't bring him on. Which means we need to find another CTO candidate. Which means Series B gets delayed. Which means Tech Core might fail," I finished. "You said. So you understand. Your stubbornness might cost us everything." I took a sip of coffee. "Or it might save us." "What's that supposed to mean?" I turned my laptop around, showing him the code analysis I'd compiled. "Someone's been sabotaging our repository, introducing bugs, creating security vulnerabilities, degrading performance. Sophisticated stuff. The kind of thing that would make us look incompetent right when we're trying to close funding." Marcus leaned forward, his expression shifting from irritation to alarm as he scanned the screen. "What? Who would do this?" "I don't know," I lied. "But I'm going to find out, and when I do, we'll need to present a unified front to the investors. Show them we have strong internal security, robust code review processes, a technical team that can handle threats." "Emma, this is serious. If someone's actively sabotaging us, then maybe we should be careful about who we bring into the inner circle," I said. "Maybe we should value loyalty and proven results over prestigious degrees." He looked at me, really looked, and I saw the moment he realized I wasn't the same woman who'd walked into his mother's house last night. Something had changed. Something fundamental. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want a seat at the table, not as your wife, as a developer, as a founder. I want my title to reflect my contributions. I want to be in the meetings where decisions get made. And I want my stock options protected." "Emma, that's my offer, Marcus. Take it or leave it." He stood up, paced the kitchen, came back. "I'll talk to my mother." "No, you'll decide. This is your company, isn't it? Or does Margaret make all your decisions?" His face flushed. "That's not fair. Neither is asking me to give up millions of dollars so you can hire someone who—" I stopped, reconsidering. I couldn't show my full hand yet. "So you can hire someone we haven't properly vetted." "Jason Park is one of the most respected—" "Jason Park was fired from Google for code theft," I said. "Did you know that?" The color drained from his face. "What? No, who told you that?" "Does it matter? Did you do a background check? Talk to his references? Or did you just see Stanford PhD and assume he was golden?" Marcus sat down heavily. "My mother, she's the one who found him, through her network." "Of course she did. Margaret Chen, always working the angles, always knowing someone who knew someone. In my first life, I'd admired her connections. In this one, I saw them for what they were. Tools of manipulation." "Call him," I said. "Ask him directly about Google. See what he says." "Emma, this is crazy. Even if there was some incident, people make mistakes. It doesn't mean—" "It means we need to be careful. We're about to trust this man with the technical heart of our company. Don't we owe it to ourselves to be sure?" He pulled out his phone, stared at it, then set it down. "I can't. My mother already promised him the position, already negotiated the terms. If I back out now, we'll look incompetent, indecisive. And if we bring him on and he destroys us from the inside, you don't know that he will. And you don't know that he won't." We were at an impasse. I could see it in his eyes, the calculation happening. His mother's expectations versus his company's security. His need to appear strong versus his fear of making the wrong choice. "I need proof," he said finally. "If you can prove Jason is the one sabotaging the code, I'll rescind the offer. But without proof, my hands are tied." It was more than I'd gotten in my first life. Then again, in my first life, I'd never fought back. "Give me 48 hours, I said. "Emma, 48 hours to audit the code, trace the intrusions, and identify the source. If I can't prove it's Jason, I paused, considering. "I'll consider transferring half my options, as a gesture of good faith." His eyes lit up. "Half? If I'm wrong, if Jason's clean and I'm just being paranoid. But if I'm right, he doesn't get hired, and my options stay exactly where they are." Marcus stood, came around the table, and kissed my forehead. The gesture felt automatic, performative. I knew you'd be reasonable. This is why I married you, Emma. You're smart, practical. 48 hours, I repeated. He left for the office, energized by what he clearly thought was a victory. I sat alone in our kitchen, staring at my laptop, and felt the weight of what I'd just promised. I had 2 days to prove Jason Park was sabotaging TechCore. 2 days to trace anonymous commits through VPN-masked IP addresses, to find a smoking gun that would hold up under scrutiny. 2 days to save my own life. I called in sick to work, ironic, since TechCore was technically my company too, and locked myself in our home office. Rachel came over around noon with Thai food and her own laptop. Okay, explain to me like I'm 5, she said, settling into the chair across from me. What are we looking for? Evidence that Jason Park has been accessing TechCore's code repository and introducing bugs. And we think he's doing this because he wants to make himself indispensable. Crash the system, then swoop in with the fixes. Classic consultant playbook, but more evil. Rachel opened a container of pad thai. Okay, but how would he even have access? He doesn't work there yet. That's what I need to figure out. We spent hours combing through server logs, tracking IP addresses, analyzing commit patterns. The sabotage was sophisticated, too sophisticated for most developers, but there were tells, little signatures in the coding style, a preference for certain variable names, a specific way of structuring conditional statements. Wait, Rachel said around 4 p.m. Go back to that commit from 3 weeks ago. I pulled it up, a small change to the database connection pooling module, introducing a memory leak that would only manifest under sustained high traffic. Look at the commit message, Rachel said. Optimization for Stanford scale performance. Who the fuck writes Stanford scale in a commit message? I felt my pulse quicken. Someone who's very proud of their Stanford degree. Or someone who's not trying very hard to hide their identity. We dug deeper, found 6 more commits with similar tells, all made late at night between 2 and 4 a.m., all introducing subtle problems that would compound under load. Okay, we have style tells and suspicious timing, I said, but we need to connect them to Jason. What about IP addresses? Routed through VPNs, but I pulled up the metadata looking for patterns. They're all using the same VPN service, Nord, and they all originate from the same approximate geographic location. San Francisco, specifically the Mission District. Rachel grabbed her own laptop. Give me 5 minutes. She called someone, a private investigator she'd used for her law firm's cases. Asked for a current address on Jason Park. Waited. 1247 Valencia Street, she said, putting her phone down. Apartment 3B, Mission District. We looked at each other. That's not proof, I said. Circumstantial at best. But it's something. What else do we have? I thought about the timing. The commits had started 3 weeks ago, right when Marcus had first mentioned bringing on a new CTO. When he'd first been in contact with Jason. He'd need access credentials, I said, to the repository. Someone would have had to give him a login. Who has the authority to create new accounts? Me, Marcus, and I pulled up the admin panel, and 3 guest accounts created 6 weeks ago by Margaret. His mother has admin access to your code repository? She's on the board, Marcus insisted. I clicked through the guest accounts. All 3 had been active. All 3 had made commits during the same late-night windows as the sabotage. Please tell me you can trace which guest account made which commits, Rachel said. I could. It took another hour of digging through authentication logs, cross-referencing timestamps, tracking session cookies. But eventually, I had it. Guest_user_02 had made every single sabotage commit, and guest_user_02 had been created specifically for Jason Park before he was even officially offered the position. Holy shit, Rachel breathed. Margaret set this up. She gave Jason access to sabotage the company so he could position himself as the savior. And she tried to get me to sign away my options before they vested, so I'd have no leverage when the truth came out. We sat in silence, the enormity of it settling over us. Emma, Rachel said carefully, Your husband's mother tried to defraud you out of millions of dollars. I know. And your husband either knew about it or is so incompetent he didn't notice someone sabotaging his own company. I know. What are you going to do? I looked at the evidence on my screen. Clear, documented, irrefutable. I could take this to Marcus right now, watch him confront his mother, force him to choose between his family and his company. Or I could be smarter about it. I'm going to set a trap, I said. The plan came together quickly. I would let Jason think he was winning. Let him believe I was about to cave, about to sign away my options. But first, I'd plant evidence in the codebase. Hidden backdoors that only I could access, time-stamped and encrypted, proving that certain critical modules could only have been written by me. Then, I'd set up a honeypot. A fake vulnerability that looked like sabotage but was actually a trigger. When Jason inevitably discovered it and claimed credit for the fix, I'd have proof he'd been monitoring the code base all along. This is diabolical, Rachel said. I love it. He tried to steal my work and my future. He's getting off easy. I spent the next 24 hours implementing the trap. Created the honeypot and the authentication module, a deliberately obvious SQL injection vulnerability that any competent developer would spot immediately. Logged every access, every query, every touch. Then I called Marcus. I can't prove it, I lied. You're right, I'm being paranoid. I could hear the relief in his voice. Emma, I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. I know it's hard, but I'll sign the papers tonight. Half my options, like I promised. Silence, then. Half? That was the deal. If I couldn't prove Jason was sabotaging us, I'd transfer half. I can't prove it, so I'll honor my word. More silence. I could picture him at his desk, calculating. Half of my options was still 1,250 shares. Still worth $525,000 at IPO. Still enough to make Jason's package attractive. Okay, he said finally. I'll have the papers drawn up. We can sign tonight at my mother's house. Just you and me this time. No Margaret, no Jason, just us. Emma, those are my terms, Marcus. Take them or leave them. He agreed. Of course he did. He was getting what he wanted. I spent the afternoon with Rachel, making sure every piece of evidence was backed up, encrypted, and stored in multiple locations. If this went wrong, if somehow I miscalculated, I needed insurance. Are you sure about this? Rachel asked as I got ready to leave. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Marcus was waiting at our apartment when I got home. He'd set up the papers on the dining table, the same table where we'd shared our first meal after moving in together, where he'd told me he loved me for the first time, where we'd planned our wedding. Just sign here, he said, pointing, and here, and initial here. I picked up the pen. The papers were different this time. Not a full transfer, just half my options as promised. But the language was still predatory. Vesting schedule reset, no acceleration clause. If I left the company for any reason, the options would be forfeit. This isn't what we discussed, I said. It's standard, Jason's lawyers insisted. Jason's lawyers, for my options. Marcus sighed. Emma, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. You agreed to this. I set down the pen. I agreed to transfer half my options as a gesture of good faith. I didn't agree to be locked into a vesting schedule that benefits Jason more than me. You're splitting hairs. I'm protecting myself, something I should have done a long time ago. His expression hardened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm not signing this, any of it. Emma, we had a deal. I said I'd consider it if I couldn't prove Jason was sabotaging us, but I didn't say I'd definitely do it. And now that I've seen these papers with their poison pill clauses and their reset schedules, I'm definitely not doing it. Marcus stood up so fast his chair fell over. Are you fucking kidding me right now? I'd never heard him swear at me. Not once in 5 years together. I'm not signing, I repeated, and then you're out. What? You're fired, Emma. Effective immediately, pack your things. You're no longer employed by TechCore Solutions. My heart was racing, but I kept my voice steady. You can't fire me without cause. You're insubordinate. You're refusing to act in the company's best interest. That's cause. I'm a founder, Marcus. I own stock. You can't just... You're not a founder. You were an early employee. There's a difference. The words hit like a physical blow. In my first life, I'd been too destroyed by the divorce to fight this battle. I'd accepted the narrative that I was just an employee, that my contributions didn't make me a founder, that I should be grateful for what I got. But I was smarter now, angrier. I have emails, I said quietly, from the early days, where you and I are both referred to as co-founders, where I'm listed as a founder in investor pitches, where you explicitly state that TechCore was our vision, our company. His face went pale. Those were informal communications. They're legally binding expressions of intent. Rachel's already reviewed them. Rachel isn't a corporate attorney? No, but the one I've hired is... I hadn't actually hired an attorney yet, but he didn't need to know that. Marcus stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Who are you? I'm the person who built your company's backend. I'm the person who debugged your code at 3 a.m. I'm the person who believed in you when you were just a guy with an idea and a dream, and I'm the person who's not going to let you steal my future. I'm not stealing anything. I'm trying to save the company. By bringing in someone who's already sabotaged it? You can't prove that. Yes, I can. I pulled out my laptop, opened the evidence file. Guest user 02, created by your mother 6 weeks ago. 17 commits introducing bugs, memory leaks, and security vulnerabilities. All made between 2 and 4 a.m., all originating from Jason Park's apartment in the Mission District. All using coding patterns consistent with his documented work history. Marcus grabbed the laptop, scrolling through the logs. I watched his face change as he absorbed what he was seeing. Confusion, denial, horror. This can't be right. My mother wouldn't. Your mother tried to get me to sign away my options before they vested. She created unauthorized admin accounts for someone who doesn't even work here. She facilitated corporate sabotage. What part of that is hard to believe? He sank into his chair, the fight draining out of him. Why? Why would she do this? Because she never thought I was good enough for you. Because she wanted control of the company. Because a Stanford CTO looks better in investor decks than a state school developer, even if the state school developer did all the actual work. Marcus put his head in his hands. For a moment, I felt sorry for him. He looked like a child who just realized his mother wasn't infallible, that the person he'd trusted most had betrayed him. But then I remembered dying alone in a studio apartment, watching his company go public without me, and the sympathy evaporated. What do you want? He asked, his voice muffled. I want Jason Park's offer rescinded. I want my title changed to co-founder and CTO. I want my stock options protected with an acceleration clause and founder-level vesting. And I want Margaret removed from any operational oversight of TechCore. She's on the board. Then she can stay on the board, but she doesn't get admin access to our systems. She doesn't get to hire or fire technical staff. She doesn't get to make decisions about equity distribution. Emma, she funded the company. She has rights. She committed fraud. She facilitated sabotage. She tried to defraud me of millions of dollars. If anything, we should be pressing charges. His head snapped up. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other across the table, across the ruins of our marriage, across the chasm of broken trust. I need to talk to her, he said finally. Explain what happened. Give her a chance to... To what? Explain why she tried to destroy her son's company? She wouldn't see it that way. She was trying to help, trying to bring in the best talent. By sabotaging what we'd already built. By pushing out the person who actually made the product work. Wake up, Marcus. Your mother doesn't care about TechCore's success. She cares about controlling it. Controlling you. He stood up again, but this time there was no anger, just exhaustion. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning. That I'm filing a complaint with the board about unauthorized access and corporate sabotage. With evidence. Emma. Tomorrow morning, Marcus. Choose wisely. He left without another word. I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by the papers he'd wanted me to sign, and felt the full weight of what I'd just done. I'd gone to war with my husband, with my mother-in-law, with the entire Chen family empire. And I'd done it with nothing but the truth and my own documentation. My phone buzzed. Rachel, how'd it go? I think I just ended my marriage. Good, it was a shitty marriage. I laughed, surprising myself. Yeah, it really was. So, what now?
Said ma'am.
Now we wait and we prepare for them to come back swinging. They did. At 11 p.m., my phone exploded with calls. Marcus, Margaret, Jason Park himself, which was bold. I ignored all of them. At midnight, an email arrived from Marcus's corporate attorney. A formal letter demanding I return company property. My laptop, my access credentials, my documentation. Threatening legal action for theft of trade secrets if I didn't comply within 24 hours. I forwarded it to Rachel with a single line. They're scared. Her response came immediately. Good, they should be. At 2 a.m., someone tried to access my TechCore account. The honeypot I'd set up triggered, logging the attempt. The IP address traced to Jason Park's apartment. He was still trying to sabotage the code. Even now, even knowing he'd been caught, he couldn't help himself. I screenshotted everything, added it to my evidence file, and went to sleep with a smile on my face. The next morning, I woke to find Marcus sitting in our living room. We need to talk, he said. He looked terrible, hadn't shaved, hadn't slept, coffee-stained shirt. This was Marcus at his lowest when the mask of the successful founder cracked and the scared boy underneath showed through. I spoke with my mother, he said. She denies everything. Says you're fabricating evidence because you're jealous of Jason. Says you're trying to sabotage the Series B because you want to keep control of the company. And what do you think? He was quiet for a long moment. I think I don't know who to believe anymore. I think my wife and my mother are at war and I'm caught in the middle. I think my company is falling apart. Your company is fine. Your family is what's falling apart. Emma, please, just tell me what really happened. No lawyers, no evidence files, no games. Just you and me, the truth. I sat down across from him. Your mother never thought I was good enough for you. She spent our entire marriage trying to edge me out, minimize my contributions, make me small. The stock options were just the final move. She found Jason, gave him access to sabotage the code, and tried to get me to sign away my equity before I realized what I'd built was valuable. It wasn't about bringing in the best talent. It was about replacing me with someone she could control. She wouldn't. Marcus, look at the evidence. Really look at it. The guest account created in her name. The timing of the commits. Jason's access attempts even after being exposed. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's documented fact. He rubbed his face. Even if you're right, and I'm not saying you are, what do you want me to do? She's my mother. Jason's already been promised the position. We're days away from closing Series B. If I back out now, if I make these accusations, everything falls apart. Then let it fall apart. Rebuild with a foundation of truth instead of fraud. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to tell his mother she's fired. I'm the one who had to realize her husband valued his mother's opinion over his wife's contributions. That landed. He flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Marcus, but it is real, and you have to decide. Are you going to build a company based on merit and honesty, or are you going to build it on nepotism and sabotage? He stood up, paced to the window, stared out at the street. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. If I choose you over her, she'll never forgive me. And if you choose her over me, I'll never forgive you. So I lose either way. No, you lose if you make the wrong choice. Choose integrity, choose honesty, choose the person who actually built your company. You win everything that matters. He turned to face me. And if I choose her? Then I take my evidence to the board, file a lawsuit for fraud and theft of intellectual property, and burn TechCore to the ground. Not because I want to, but because I won't let anyone steal my work again. Again! Shit, I'd slipped. Figure of speech. But he was looking at me strangely now, like he could sense something had changed, something fundamental he couldn't quite identify. You're different, he said. Since that dinner at my mother's house, you're harder. I'm clearer about what I want and what I deserve. What happened, Emma? What changed? I met his eyes and saw the man I'd loved, the man I'd built a company with, the man who'd ultimately chosen his mother over me and watched me die alone and forgotten. I grew up, I said. Finally. He left to think. I knew what that meant. He was going to his mother, laying out the situation, letting her guide him to the decision she wanted, the decision that protected the Chen family's interests above all else. I'd been through this before. I knew how it ended. So I made my own calls. First, to Rachel's corporate attorney friend. Retained him officially, got the paperwork started for my founder status claim. Second, to 3 board members I'd built relationships with in my first life. Explained the situation, sent them the evidence, asked for an emergency meeting. Third, to a journalist at TechCrunch who'd covered our seed round. Off the record, just planting seeds. Interesting story developing at Tech Core Solutions. Corporate sabotage, founder disputes, potential fraud, might want to keep an eye on it. By noon, I had responses. The attorney was confident about my founder status claim. 2 board members were deeply concerned and wanted a full audit. The journalist was very interested in following up. At 3 p.m., Marcus called. Emergency board meeting at 5, my mother's called it. She's making a motion to have you removed from the company entirely. On what grounds? Insubordination, theft of trade secrets, attempting to defraud the company by claiming credit for work that wasn't yours. I actually laughed. She's accusing me of what she did. Emma, this is serious. If the board votes in her favor, they won't. How can you be so sure? Because I sent them all the evidence this morning, because 2 of them are already calling for an audit. Because your mother overplayed her hand. Silence, then quietly, you went around me. You went to her, I went to the truth. We both made our choices. He hung up. The board meeting was virtual, which was good. It meant I didn't have to face Margaret Chen in person. 7 faces on screen. Marcus, Margaret, 3 VCs who'd invested in our seed round, and 2 independent board members recruited for their industry expertise. Margaret spoke first, composed and confident. Gentlemen, thank you for convening on short notice. I've called this meeting to address a serious issue: Emma Chen's increasingly erratic behavior and her attempts to sabotage TechCore's growth. She laid out her case methodically. My refusal to sign over options to Jason Park. My unfounded accusations against both Jason and herself. My theft of company documentation. My threats to go to the press with false information. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She sounded reasonable, concerned, maternal. Just a mother trying to protect her son's company from a disturbed employee. Then, it was my turn. I appreciate Margaret's version of events, I said, but I'd like to present some additional context. I shared my screen, showed the code repository commits, the guest account created under Margaret's name, the pattern of sabotage, Jason's IP address matching the commit locations. The attempted access to my account after the sabotage was exposed. I spoke calmly, factually, letting the evidence speak for itself. When I finished, the silence was deafening. One of the VCs, Sarah Chen, no relation, spoke first. Margaret, can you explain why a guest account was created under your admin credentials? I don't recall creating any such account, Margaret said smoothly. Emma has admin access as well. She could have created it herself and attributed it to me. The creation was logged with your unique authentication token, I said, which is generated by your specific password and 2-factor device. Unless you're suggesting I somehow stole your phone and memorized your password, I'm suggesting you're a talented developer who could have fabricated these logs. Then let's have an independent audit, Sarah said. Bring in a forensic firm, examine the servers, verify the authentication tokens. Margaret's composure cracked just slightly. That seems like an overreaction. It seems like due diligence, another board member cut in. Margaret, I have to say, this evidence is troubling. Even if we assume Emma fabricated some of it, which I'm not suggesting she did, the pattern is concerning. What pattern? Margaret asked, but her voice had lost its certainty. The pattern of you prioritizing outside hires over internal talent, Sarah said. The pattern of pushing to bring in Jason Park despite his questionable background. The pattern of asking Emma to sign away equity right before it vested. Even without the sabotage allegations, these decisions raise questions about judgment. Marcus had been silent throughout, his face carefully neutral. Now he spoke. Emma, if what you're saying is true, if my mother really did facilitate this sabotage, what do you want to happen? all eyes turned to me. I want Jason Park's offer rescinded, I said. I want my title corrected to reflect my actual role, co-founder and CTO. I want my equity protected with founder-level vesting and acceleration clauses. And I want all admin access reviewed and limited to active employees only. That's outrageous, Margaret said. I'm on the board. I have every right to access. You have the right to oversight, I corrected. Not operational control. There's a difference. Sarah was nodding. Emma's right. Board members shouldn't have admin access to production systems. That's a basic governance principle. I move that we accept Emma's demands pending the results of an independent audit, another VC said. If the audit confirms her version of events, the changes become permanent. If it disproves them, Emma resigns and transfers all equity. Seconded, Sarah said immediately. Margaret looked at Marcus. Are you going to let them do this? He met her eyes for a long moment. Then he said, I move to approve. All in favor? 4 hands went up. Marcus's, Sarah's, 2 other board members. Margaret's face went white. You're voting against me? I'm voting for the truth, Mom, and for my company. The vote passed. Just like that, everything changed. The forensic audit took 3 days. 3 days of investigators combing through server logs, examining authentication tokens, interviewing staff. 3 days of Margaret calling me constantly, alternating between threats and apologies. 3 days of Marcus sleeping at a hotel because he couldn't face either his mother or his wife. The results came back on a Friday afternoon. Everything I'd claimed was accurate. Guest user 02 had been created with Margaret's credentials. The sabotage commits had originated from Jason Park's apartment. The timeline matched my evidence exactly. Jason Park's offer was rescinded. He threatened to sue. The company's attorneys, armed with evidence of his sabotage and his undisclosed firing from Google, suggested he reconsider. He did. Margaret resigned from the board. Not because she was forced to, but because the other board members made it clear she'd lost their trust. She sent me a single email afterward. You've destroyed this family. I hope you're proud. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Marcus and I had one final conversation in the apartment we'd shared for 3 years. I don't know if I can forgive you, he said, for going after my mother like that. I went after the truth. Your mother just happened to be on the wrong side of it. She was trying to help. In her own way, she thought she could control your company and your life. She was wrong. He looked at me, and I saw the moment he realized our marriage was over. Not because of the stock options or the sabotage or the board meeting, because we were fundamentally different people who'd wanted different things. What happens now? He asked. Now we figure out if we can work together as co-founders or if we need to separate the company too. Emma, I can't run TechCore without you. The code base, the architecture, it's all yours. I know. So you're going to make me choose, work with you, or lose everything. I'm going to make you recognize what I contributed, what I'm worth, what I've always been worth. He nodded slowly. Okay, co-founder and CTO, equal equity split, full control over technical decisions. And I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner, for letting my mother manipulate us both, for almost giving away your future. It wasn't enough, apologies never were, but it was a start. We'll need marriage counseling, I said, if we're going to work together and stay married. Are we? Staying married? I looked at the man I'd loved across 2 lifetimes, the man who'd hurt me in ways he couldn't even comprehend, and I felt nothing. The love had burned away, replaced by something colder, clearer. I don't know, I said honestly, but we have 6 months until Series B closes. Let's focus on that first. We did. Series B closed at $23 million, valuing TechCore at $100 million pre-money. My 25% founder equity was suddenly worth $25 million on paper. The marriage lasted another year. We tried counseling, tried separating, tried dating other people while still being legally married. Eventually, we admitted what we both knew. We worked better as business partners than as spouses. The divorce was clean. We'd learned from our mistakes, equal asset split, no fighting over the company, no drama. His next girlfriend was a former McKinsey consultant with an MBA from Wharton. She was smart, ambitious, and had absolutely no interest in signing away her own value to make anyone else comfortable. I approved. 3 years after my rebirth, TechCore went public. Opening price, $42 per share. My equity was worth $94 million. I was being interviewed by CNBC on the trading floor when they asked me the question, "What's your advice for other female founders?" I thought about dying alone in that studio apartment, about signing away my future because I'd been conditioned to believe my value was in supporting others, not claiming my own worth, about the second chance I'd been given and what I'd done with it. Know your worth, I said. Document everything. Trust yourself more than you trust anyone else's version of your story, and never, ever sign anything without reading it first. The interview went viral. Women started reaching out, sharing their own stories of being pushed out of companies they'd built, of signing away equity under pressure, of watching men take credit for their work. And I started a fund, early-stage investments in women-led startups with a focus on protecting founder equity and preventing dilution. We had one ironclad rule. No one pressures our founders to give up their stakes. Not investors, not advisors, not family members. 5 years after Rebirth, my fund had invested in 40 companies. 12 had been acquired, 3 had gone public. Our return rate was 340%. People asked how I'd gotten so good at identifying promising founders. I never told them the truth. I remembered dying powerless and broke, and I'd decided no one else would if I could help it. I also never told anyone about the rebirth. It sounded crazy, even to me. Sometimes I wondered if I'd imagined it, if the whole thing had been a stress-induced hallucination or a mental break. But then I'd remember the exact date my options vested, the exact words Margaret used at that dinner, the exact pattern of Jason's sabotage commits. I couldn't have known those things, couldn't have predicted them, unless I'd lived them before. 7 years after Rebirth, Marcus reached out. He was getting married again, to the McKinsey consultant, unsurprisingly, and wanted to invite me to the wedding. "No hard feelings?" he asked. "No hard feelings," I confirmed. "You were a good business partner, just not a good husband." "Fair," he paused. "Emma, I need to ask you something. That night at my mother's house when you refused to sign the stock option transfer, it was like you knew what was going to happen, knew what the options would be worth." "How?" I thought about telling him, about explaining the impossible, the rebirth, the second chance, about sharing the weight I'd carried alone for 7 years. Instead, I said, "I got smart, Marcus, finally." He laughed. "That you did. TechCore wouldn't exist without you, Not the way it is now." "I know. Does that bother you? That I get to keep running it?" "No, you're good at the vision thing, the big picture. I'm good at the details, the execution. We were always better as a team than as a couple." "Truth." Another pause. "She asks about you sometimes. My mother." "How is Margaret?" "Retired. She's on some nonprofit boards now. Does charity work, I think. I think she regrets what happened, what she tried to do." "Does she?" "She won't admit it, but yeah, I think she does." I didn't respond. Margaret's regrets weren't my problem anymore. "Anyway," Marcus said, "invitation's open if you want to come. No pressure." I went. Sat in the back, watched Marcus marry someone who looked happy and confident, and like she'd never signed anything she didn't fully understand. His mother was there too, older now, diminished somehow. Our eyes met across the room. She looked away first. After the ceremony, at the reception, she approached me. "Emma, you look well." "Thank you. So do you. I suppose we should talk, clear the air." "If you'd like." She led me to a quiet corner away from the celebration. Up close, I could see the lines around her eyes, the gray in her hair she no longer bothered to cover. "I was wrong," she said abruptly. "About you. About what you brought to the company. I let my own biases cloud my judgment. You tried to defraud me of millions of dollars. I was trying to protect my son's interests by destroying mine." She flinched. "I didn't see it that way at the time. I thought you were just an employee who'd gotten lucky, that Marcus had been generous giving you equity at all. I didn't understand how much of TechCore was yours. Because I didn't have a Stanford degree. Because I didn't want to see it." She met my eyes. I'm sorry, Emma, truly. What I did was wrong." I waited for the anger, the vindication, the satisfaction of hearing her apologize. It didn't come, just a sort of tired acceptance. Okay, I said. Okay? I accept your apology. It doesn't change what happened, but I accept it. She looked surprised. That's it? No recriminations? No demands for restitution? What would be the point? You lost your position on the board. Your relationship with Marcus was damaged. I got my equity and my title. Everyone paid a price. You're more gracious than I would be. I'm practical. Holding on to anger just weighs you down. She smiled slightly. You've changed. You're harder now, sharper. I grew up. No, she said slowly. It's more than that. You carry yourself like someone who's been through something transformative. I thought about that studio apartment, the dying alone, the chance to do it all again. Maybe I have, I said. We stood in silence for a moment, two women who'd been at war, now just tired veterans on the same battlefield. For what it's worth, Margaret said finally, Marcus made the right choice. Keeping you. The company wouldn't have survived without you. I know, she laughed, a genuine sound. Of course you do. She walked away back to her son's wedding, and I stood alone feeling something like closure. 10 years after Rebirth, I sold my stake in TechCore. Walked away with $340 million after taxes. Marcus bought some of it, the rest went to a consortium of investors. We shook hands on the deal and meant it. I was 32 years old, the same age I'd been when I died in my first life, and I was free. Free of TechCore, free of Marcus, free of the weight of proving myself, of fighting for recognition, of documentation and evidence and constant vigilance. I stood in my new apartment, a penthouse in Pacific Heights, nothing like that studio with the peeling wallpaper, and looked out at the San Francisco Bay. My phone rang. Rachel. Did you see? She asked. See what? Jason Park got arrested. SEC investigation. Turns out he's been running the same sabotage scheme at 3 other companies. You were the only one who caught him. I pulled up the news on my laptop. There it was. Former Google employee, Stanford PhD, charged with corporate espionage and fraud. Multiple victims, millions in damages. How do you feel? Rachel asked. Vindicated and tired. Want to get drinks and celebrate someone else's downfall for once? I laughed. Yeah, I do. We went to the same bar where we'd celebrated my initial funding round in both lifetimes. Ordered the same drinks, but everything was different. Can I ask you something? Rachel said, 3 drinks in. That night you came back from Marcus's mother's house when you refused to sign. You were different, like you'd made a decision. What changed? I looked at my best friend, the person who'd stood by me through everything, and almost told her. Almost explained about the rebirth, the second chance, the dying alone. Instead, I said, I decided I was worth fighting for. Damn right you are, she raised her glass. To Emma Chen, badass founder, venture capitalist, and the woman who took down Jason Park. I didn't take him down, he took himself down by being a criminal. You exposed him, that counts. We drank to that, to exposure, to truth, to second chances, even if she didn't know what that really meant. 15 years after Rebirth, I published a book. Know Your Worth, A Founder's Guide to Protecting Your Equity. It became a bestseller in the business category, required reading at half the top MBA programs. I gave talks, started a podcast, mentored dozens of founders, especially women, especially the ones who reminded me of my younger self. Talented, hardworking, and too willing to minimize their own contributions. Document everything, I'd tell them. Trust your instincts, read every contract. Never sign anything under pressure. Your work has value, your time has value, you have value. Some of them listened, some of them didn't. I couldn't save everyone, but the ones I did save, they went on to build empires, to protect their equity, to claim their worth. And sometimes late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd pull up the news about TechCore. Marcus had taken it in a different direction after I left, focusing on enterprise solutions instead of consumer products. The company was worth $800 million now, successful but not spectacular. I wondered what it would have been worth if I'd stayed, if we'd made different choices, if Margaret hadn't tried to push me out and Jason hadn't been a criminal and Marcus hadn't been caught between his mother and his wife. But those were questions for a different lifetime. In this one, I'd made my choices and lived with the consequences. And the consequences had been pretty damn good. 20 years after Rebirth, I announced my retirement from active investing. 52 years old, worth just over $1 billion, and ready to do something new. The press conference was packed. Every major tech publication, every financial news outlet, everyone who'd followed my career from TechCore to my fund to my book to whatever came next. "What's next for Emma Chen?" a reporter asked. I smiled. "I'm starting a foundation. Focus on STEM education for girls from underrepresented backgrounds. Scholarships, mentorship, the works. With one specific requirement, every scholarship recipient has to take a course on negotiation, equity, and business fundamentals, so they know their worth before they enter the workforce." Why that focus? I thought about the girl I'd been at 22. Fresh out of state school, brilliant with code, terrible with negotiation. The girl who'd have signed away her future because she didn't know any better. "Because talent isn't enough," I said. "You need to know how to value it, how to protect it, how to fight for it. I want to teach the next generation before they make the mistakes I almost made." Another reporter: "Do you have any regrets? About TechCore, the divorce, any of it?" I considered lying, saying something diplomatic about learning experiences and growth opportunities. Instead, I told the truth. I regret the time I wasted being small, being apologetic, being grateful for scraps when I deserved the whole meal. But I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret claiming my worth, and I don't regret any decision I made once I started valuing myself properly. When was that? When did you start valuing yourself? I smiled. The night I refused to sign away my future. Everything changed after that. The press conference ended. I walked out of the building into the San Francisco afternoon, and for just a moment, I let myself remember the studio apartment, the failing heart, the news alert about Marcus's IPO, the death that had given me life. I still didn't understand the rebirth. Didn't know if it was real or imagined, divine intervention or mental break, cosmic accident or earned reward, but it didn't matter. What mattered was what I'd done with it. I'd fought, I'd won, I'd built something that would outlast me. And I'd made damn sure no one would ever die alone and forgotten because they'd signed away their worth. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Saw the press conference. Proud of you. Drinks?" I texted back, "Always." Some things, I thought, walking toward the bar where my best friend waited, were worth fighting for across lifetimes. And knowing your worth, that was at the top of the list.